Hi, and welcome to the second presentation in the scientific holistic approach. And here I'm going to talk about what I believe is the holistic human, and here I am, John Duthie, and I am the holistic human. And I believe it's important because of these factors that I've stated below, which is part of the purpose of this presentation. So, when I'm doing my CPD, I'll very often put the slide up and I'll say, what's this? Well, most people will say it's a jellyfish. Well, actually, it isn't. It's something called a siphonophore. And a siphonophore is actually 4 different organisms that communicate so symbiotically that they appear to be one. And I am beginning to think of the average human as actually more like a siphonophore. And the reason for that is because we're made up of a lot of different cells. And 80% of our cells are microbiome, and that microbiome in itself behaves like a multicellular organism. And this is what I refer to as the microbiome, and it's been suggested that perhaps I should say something about what I understand by the microbiome, because a lot of people who've been watching these presentations are not that familiar with the term. So I'm going to go back to that concept. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to disappear from your screen because again I am actually nothing more than a distraction. So here is a presentation that I did in 2013. My interest in biofilms, health and microbiome started off when I was treating HIV patients in 87 to 92, and I had to learn an awful lot about microbiome. And so this was where my interest started. And microbiomes are what we used to call biofilms. And the bacteria work in close unison, and as you can see from this slide, they create cities, they have communication systems, they have waste transfer, so they've got bin men who come up and pick things up, they do recycling, and a lot of their organisation would be the envy of any city council. And the high resolution microscopes, we can see how these are built. And oh look, here it looks like we've got a picture of a coronavirus. It's only missing a red spike and a blue thing, and there it would be trying to attach itself to the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors. This is 2013, obviously this is just a generic picture, but you can see a familiarity, and that within the biofilms there's continuous chemical communication, so the bacteria know what's going on, even if we don't. Now, one of the problems with biofilms is that they work so well that they leave conventional antibiotics to some extent impotent. And you've got to remember that a biofilm, the bacteria in it are 1,000 times less likely to succumb to antibiotics. So we have to be aware of this, and we have to protect our biofilms, because our biofilms also provide their own protection for us. Now obviously as a dentist, a lot of these biofilms I've been thinking of in terms of plaque. But of course we have biofilms in our gut, we have biofilm in all our blood vessels. 80% of atheromatous plaques are colonized by Porphyromonas gingivalis, which can communicate with other bacteria and has the ability to transfer antibiotic plasmids to other species of bacteria. And that's really dangerous, and we should know about it. And the trigger for those bacteria to do that is actually the prescription of tetracycline, which is quite common. And anybody who's been to malarial countries may well have been taking doxycycline. We don't really understand the full implications of this, but we should be bearing in mind that maybe it's more important than we thought it was. So biofilms, I said that they behave almost like a multicellular organism, and they communicate, and they can coordinate their activities. Now, how do they do this? Well, there's a concept called Quorum Sensing, and this, we remember, is 2013. Now, as a retired dentist, I haven't really been keeping up to date with this, so you need to look up all the modern stuff on Quorum Sensing. It will have changed, but I can tell you that we'll have more complex understanding, but one thing for sure is it's going to be there. And when I listen to the Department of Health, it's almost as if they don't know about biofilms, microbiomes, and communication of bacteria. They think they can go to war with them. And, you know, they're just much cleverer than that. I mean, the bacteria, not the politicians. So, quorum sensing enables bacteria to know when they're in a position to cause infection. And so there are quite a lot of scientists have been looking at, is this a potential for creating drugs in order to interfere with quorum sensing? And the answer to that is yes, it probably is. So it throws up a new drug target, but we're going to have to be very careful, because not only do bacteria communicate with each other, they also communicate with our human cells. And our human cells communicate with each other, but there's a kind of chemical warfare going on between the bacteria and our own chemical cells by the bacteria mimicking hormones and making the body respond in a certain way, and vice versa. And as you'll see from this, one of the natural products that does this is propolis, and that can interfere with biofilms setting up dental plaque. So they're not content to just communicate with themselves, they are communicating with our human cells, and that warfare is going to be further complicated by us interfering with drugs, because if we don't really understand what we're doing, we could actually make things better rather than worse. So when you start looking at problems like MRSA and E. coli, it's a very complex system, and I think we should be very careful. So just to sum up, bacteria will always live with us. We need them. Without our microbiome, we'll die. It's vital that we learn to speak their language and that we communicate with them in a symbiotic way, because remember, there's 80% of them, there's only 20% of our human cells. And so in this presentation at the bottom there, I was saying this is actually really important, therefore, that people see hygienists to clean off the biofilm in plaque and to keep it down to acceptable levels, and don't allow bacteria or anaerobes to get up to quorum sensing levels when they're likely to cause disease. So the next part of this presentation is going to be about the mind-body, and within it I'll be talking and referring to the microbiome, and you'll see it on a lot of slides, and that was just a very quick introduction to what the microbiome was I was alluding to.